You guys are sick and tired of hearing about Marvel Rivals, okay? I know you guys have heard about this game like literally everywhere, but Marvel Rivals is pretty special, in this current time just because there's not a lot of successful live service games that have released in the last year or two. Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, Concord, you name it. A lot of live service games have absolutely fallen on their face. It's really getting to a point where if a game is labeled a live service game, it's going to instantly deter many players. That's why Marvel Rivals is extremely important to, make a video about. So what makes a live service game profitable and successful in the year 2025 when there's so much competition out here? That's what this video is going to be about today. Hi, my name's Ohezi. If you guys are new here, make sure to drop a like and a subscribe. It really helps me out. And let's go ahead and get into the video. So first things first here, the elephant in the room, if you will. Obviously, Marvel Rivals is the Marvel IP. It is a massive IP with so much inspiration and content to draw from. But I think there's many other factors as to why this game's successful. It's not just successful because it's the Marvel IP. Now, one of the most obvious factors that goes into making a successful live service game is hard work. You really have to think about it, man. You have to develop a game from the ground up, and then you have to constantly support it and, put energy into it. A lot of companies nowadays with these failed live service games just think that you can make a live service game that infinitely prints money, even though all the content is just slopped together lazily. You cannot do that. Making a live service game that's going to be successful is going to take a lot of resources and a lot of time and energy because you have to constantly update and change things, and you just overall you have to constantly develop the game. It's not like you make the game and you're done like any other single player game. It requires a lot of energy. A lot of these higher ups and executives at these big AAA companies like Sony and Ubisoft think that you can, give a development team minimal resources and minimal attention and have them develop a live service game that is just going to be a money printer. No, if you're going to make a successful live service game, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot more than just developing a game and releasing it. And using Marvel Rivals as an example, you have to really think about how much effort they are really dedicating to this game. I mean, you have cosmetics that are being released all the time. You have seasonal content. They're constantly adding new characters. They have to worry about balance. In the game, they also have tournaments. They have an in-game tournament tab where people, can compete for real money. There's a ranked system. There's a lot going on within Marvel Rivals that is kind of demanding developer attention, and they are doing a great job at managing all of it. That is really what a lot of higher executives at gaming companies just don't understand. Live service games can make you a lot of money. They can be super profitable, but you have to dedicate a lot of resources to manage them. And Marvel Rivals is an example of that. These devs are working extremely, extremely hard, and they are bringing us some great live service content. Speaking of game development, it is really, really important to make sure that your game is fun. If your live service game is not fun and it doesn't have a fun concept, guess what? Nobody's going to play it. Newsflash, I don't want to run around, fighting the same reskinned enemies. I'm looking at you, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. That gameplay loop is not fun by any means. Marvel Rivals has a really fun gameplay loop that I feel like is pretty accessible for most players. It does have a high skill ceiling, so you can get better at the game, which is fun. There's a wide variety of characters that all have their own intricacies and team-ups with one another, and that makes it even more fun, kind of learning the team ups and everything that every character has to offer. Getting better at the game overall is just really, really fun because the core game is fun, dude. I don't know how many times I'm going to say fun, but having a fun game is what makes a live service game successful. If you want people to buy microtransactions and, cosmetics or anything like that, the game has to be fun. People will buy microtransactions if the game is fun. If you want a live service game to have longevity, you're going to have a community behind it. And the way you get a community behind a game is by making a fun game. People don't make content around games that they find to be boring. And a lot of companies try to artificially, develop communities within their games. For example, they might pay content creators to play their game for a couple days, and that is, most certainly a trend that we have seen here in pretty recent years. And I'm not saying that Marvel Rivals didn't do that, because if I do remember correctly, there were some streamers who were sponsored by Marvel Rivals to play the game. But at the end of the day, the game was fun, and I think that is totally okay as long as the game is good. But we've seen time and time again these games that come out that try to basically pay people to play them and get the word out there, and it just never sticks the landing. It never sticks to landing, man. You can throw as much money as you want at your problems, but at the end of the day, if you have a bad product, you have a bad product, and nobody is going to waste their time on that bad product, in this case, a bad live service game. Speaking of fun, it is super important to make sure that your game is balanced. If you have a really unbalanced game, that can ruin the experience for a lot of players. And a game like Marvel Rivals has a really difficult task with balancing, right? Because there's so many characters and so many different moving pieces. Now, I think a lot of game companies need to take notes from Marvel Rivals, because the standard with balancing games is just to nerf the strongest thing, right? But Marvel Rivals pretty much aims to kind of buff the weaker characters and make everyone strong in their own right. And this is really good because it makes the game super approachable and accessible for new players. When I first downloaded the game, I didn't know much about any of the characters' abilities. So I was, intimidated by the character selection here. I was like, who is good? And ultimately, I made my decisions on who I was going to play off my favorite Marvel characters, right? I think it's a genius way to use the IP. I loaded up the Punisher because he's one of my favorites, and I was able to be effective and do my thing, and that made it a really fun experience for me and made me want to keep playing and, keep learning the other characters. Having an absolutely broken, overpowered meta can absolutely ruin the experience for players. 100%. But I think a big issue that a lot of companies have with their online games nowadays is they overbalance and they over nerf things. A good example of this is Helldivers 2. They nerfed a lot of stuff into the ground in that game, and that drove a lot of players away. I know this is a different, type of online game, right? It's a PvE game, and it's a little bit different with PvP, but look at a game like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I love Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. It is one of my favorite fighting games in recent years, but I would be lying to you if I told you that this game was balanced. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is not balanced whatsoever, but guess what? That's what makes it fun, in my opinion. Dragon Ball is all about overpowered characters fighting each other, so, it just adds to the charm of the game. Marvel Rivals does a great job with the balancing, in my opinion, and I think a lot of developers, like I said before, need to take notes. So many developers nowadays over nerf, and don't get me wrong, like I said before, it can totally ruin your experience when you're, being whooped by some overpowered meta, but you don't have that problem if every character is strong, and that is what makes this game awesome, in my opinion. I have not played with a character that I have thought, was bad. Every character in Marvel Rivals is effective in their own right. Another thing that Marvel Rivals does that keeps the game extremely balanced, in my opinion, is the fact that none of the characters are locked behind any sort of paywall or anything, okay? Look at a game like Valorant. I used to play a lot of Valorant. Now, in Valorant, you don't have to pay to unlock characters per se, but it does take quite a bit of grinding if you're not going to pay. And that can be really annoying when they add a new operator that's super overpowered. You can either buy it or you could grind and, get it. And that just is really frustrating, in my opinion. But in Marvel Rivals, dude, every single character is free for everyone. You can download the game and have access to every single hero/character, whatever you want to call it. I think that's incredible. And as a byproduct of them having this feature, I think that balances the game, because if they add a new overpowered character, anybody can play that character. I think that is a great thing that they're doing here. I think a lot more games like this need to start implementing that feature alone. This feature is also such a positive user experience, in my opinion, because you can actually just experiment with whoever you want and find the characters that are catered to your playstyle. A lot of times in these sorts of hero shooter games, you're cornered into, playing as some starter operators slash characters, and those operators and characters might not play how you play the game, and it just isn't a good experience at first, which can kind of demotivate you from playing the game. Whereas Marvel Rivals, you can literally switch to whoever you want with the click of a button. You know, it really is fun for the user to be able to kind of experience every single play style and find what fits best for them. And, they don't have to, pay, there's no strings attached or anything like that. I think that's just so incredible for the user experience. And in this day and age with live service games, user experience is everything. Gone are the days where you can corner players into buying something that's pay to win because they want to be the best or whatever, right? There's competition everywhere, and if users sense any sort of pay to win in a video game nowadays, they're out, dude. They're leaving. They're not wasting their time on it. At least that's how I am. Now, a lot of you guys might be sitting here and, listening to the concepts that I'm talking about here, and you might be like, duh, this is obvious. Of course you want your video game to be fun. What are you even talking about? But this is what's important to note here, guys. A lot of video game companies nowadays have completely just lost sight of that. Like, I'm being so serious. They've seriously lost sight of that, of these basic principles. And, Marvel Rivals returns the business model to the basics, a video game that's fun. And surprise, surprise, it's successful. Wow, everyone's mind blown. Yes, the Marvel IP helps for sure, but I feel like the IP isn't enough to make this game special. It actually has to be great for it to receive all this praise, and it is great. It's a really good game. But a lot of you guys are sitting here listening to the concepts I'm talking about. You might be like, well, yeah, that's common sense. But the truth is, the reality is a lot of companies have completely lost sight of that. It's actually mind-boggling to me. We live in an era where corporations just throw money at their creative issues. I mean, look at Skull and Bones, the first quadruple A game ever, right? A live service pirate game that fell right on its face, dude. This was a really expensive failure, and this is just proof that these executives just throw money at their creative issues and they really don't know what they're doing. And that kind of incompetence is just mind-blowing to me, to be spending that much money. Like, I just don't understand, man. I can't even wrap my head around it. But that's the world in the gaming industry that we currently have. I just really can't understand why it's so hard for a lot of these companies and these executives to see that we just want fun stuff. And in order to get us the fun stuff, you give your developers breathing room to work so that they can produce something that is FUN, fun, dude. And Marvel Rivals, in that sense, is the gold standard for me. It's the absolute gold standard, I think another big misconception that these companies have is that live service games are just free infinite money glitches, and that's just not true. Live service games take a lot of time, energy, and money and resources to run, like I said before. And that is also where I think priorities are messed up, I can definitely see how executives at a company like Ubisoft think, oh yeah, live service pirate game, yeah, that'll just print bills, man. No, it's not. You have to constantly be working on it if you want to see the returns. Like, especially nowadays, man, gamers are really, really harsh and they critique a lot, as they should. Gaming is an expensive hobby. It can really, put a burden on your wallet. So gamers are critical. So I totally get it. It's just mind-blowing to me that Marvel Rivals does the fundamentals correctly in terms of video game development, and it's like a smash hit, and it's got everyone turning their heads. Like, it's no surprise to me, and if you guys are tapped in the gaming industry, it's no surprise. But we live in a world where common sense in the video game industry isn't that prevalent, at least in the AAA space, but yeah, man, that's going to do it for today's video. I'm loving Marvel Rivals. This is really good, and I do think that this is low-key like the gold standard currently for online free-to-play games. This game is absolutely fantastic. I'm having a blast. What do you guys think, man? What are your guys' thoughts on Marvel Rivals so far? Are you guys looking forward to future content? All of that stuff. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.